They banned Lao Tzu's texts for the same reason they burned Nietzsche's work. It reveals that everything you've been taught about power is backwards. Here's the forbidden truth. Winning isn't about force. It's about making your enemy's strength destroy them. They don't burn books anymore. It's too obvious. Instead, they sanitize them. They misinterpret them. They bury the dangerous ideas under a mountain of safe, academic jargon until the original fire is nothing but cold ash. For centuries, the most dangerous ideas have been hidden in plain sight. They disguise them as philosophy, as spirituality, as ancient wisdom, too abstract to be practical. But the truth is far more sinister. These texts were operational manuals, written by masters of human psychology who understood something we've forgotten, that the greatest victories are invisible. In ancient China, something unprecedented happened. A philosopher named Lao Tzu wrote a text so strategically dangerous that emperors alternately banned it and studied it in secret. The Tao Te Ching is disguised as spiritual poetry, but actually the most sophisticated psychological warfare manual ever created. But here's what they don't teach you in history class. In 1971, the CIA's Psychological Warfare Division conducted a classified study on unconventional conflict strategies. The Tao Te Ching was their primary text. Why? Because it taught them how to win wars without the enemy knowing a war had begun. The study, declassified decades later, revealed something chilling. Western military doctrine focused on overwhelming force, superior firepower, visible dominance. But Eastern strategy operated on a completely different principle: psychological invisibility. The enemy defeats themselves while believing they're winning. Think about it. Every war the United States has lost in the past 50 years has been against enemies who understood this principle. Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, often superior military technology is defeated by opponents who mastered the art of strategic yielding. They didn't fight America's strengths. They made America's strengths irrelevant. While Sun Tzu taught you how to win battles, Lao Tzu taught something far more terrifying: how to make your enemies destroy themselves. While Machiavelli showed you how to seize power, Lao Tzu revealed how to make others hand it to you willingly. The West has sanitized Taoism into harmless meditation and fortune cookie wisdom. Go with the flow. Be like water. They've turned the most ruthless strategic philosophy in history into New Age therapy for your feelings. But consider this. Every major tech billionaire has studied Eastern philosophy. Every hedge fund manager worth billions understands these principles. Every political operator who shapes global events knows these laws by heart. They use the real Tao while feeding you the sanitized version. The real Tao, the forbidden Tao, isn't about inner peace. It's about outer dominance. It's about using your opponent's strength as the weapon that destroys them. It's about winning wars without your enemies even realizing there was a battle. Today, we reveal the suppressed text. This isn't the Taoism from your yoga class. This is Lao Tzu, the strategist, the master manipulator, the architect of invisible victory. These are the 3 forbidden laws that let you crush your enemies by doing nothing. And the first law will completely invert your understanding of control. The first and most misunderstood law of invisible power. Every amateur tries to control through force grabbing, pushing, demanding. Lao Tzu calls this the path of certain defeat. Watch how most people handle conflict. They meet aggression with aggression, argument with argument, pressure with pressure. They exhaust themselves fighting on their enemy's chosen battlefield, using their enemy's preferred weapons. The master does the opposite. When someone attacks you directly, you don't block, you redirect. When they push, you don't push back, you step aside and let their momentum carry them past their target. When they demand your attention, you don't fight for control of the conversation. You give them exactly what they think they want until they realize it's destroying them. This is the art of invisible control. You're not controlling your enemy, you're controlling the terrain on which they operate. You're not winning the argument, you're choosing which argument gets to exist. Here's how it works in practice. Someone insults you in a meeting. The amateur fires back with a clever comeback. The master says, "You might be right. Tell me more about that." Suddenly, the attacker is trapped. They have to either escalate to absurdity or back down. Either way, they've lost the room. But here's the deeper psychology. The person who attacks you publicly is broadcasting their insecurity to everyone present. By responding with genuine curiosity instead of defense, you force them to continue revealing their weakness while you appear confident and controlled. The audience unconsciously shifts to your side not because you won an argument, but because you demonstrated superior emotional intelligence. In negotiations, when someone makes an aggressive demand, don't counteroffer. Instead, say, "That's interesting. Help me understand why that number works for you." Now they have to justify their position while you gather intelligence about their real needs and weaknesses. Most people miss the psychological warfare happening here. When someone makes an extreme demand, they're hoping you'll either accept it out of intimidation or counter with your real bottom line out of frustration. By asking for their reasoning, you force them to either admit their initial demand was unrealistic or construct. elaborate justifications, and that will reveal their actual constraints, the forbidden truth. Your enemy's aggression is their confession of weakness. Their need to attack reveals exactly where they feel powerless. Their anger shows you what they're terrified of losing. Their demands expose what they think they lack. Here's how Steve Jobs weaponized this principle. During heated board meetings, while others argued and defended their positions, Jobs would go completely silent. Not passive, strategically absent. He'd let critics rant until they revealed their insecurities, their real motivations, their breaking points. Then he'd speak once, with surgical precision, targeting exactly what they'd exposed. But Jobs took this further. He understood that in corporate environments, the person who speaks the most is often perceived as the least confident. By remaining silent while others exhausted themselves in debate, he positioned himself as the authority whose words carried weight. When he finally spoke, the room would fall silent, not because he was the loudest, but because his scarcity made his input valuable. This principle extends beyond boardrooms. In any group dynamic, the person desperately trying to prove their point has already lost. The person comfortable with silence, comfortable with letting others reveal themselves, holds the psychological advantage. They become the center around which all other energy orbits. Watch this in political debates, family arguments, even social media discussions. The most desperate voice is the weakest voice. The most urgent argument is the most fragile argument. The person who needs to be right is advertising their fear of being wrong. For the next week, practice the discipline of strategic redirection. When someone challenges you, attacks your idea, or tries to provoke you, do not engage on their terms. Instead, say exactly this: "Help me understand why this matters to you." Then go silent. Watch how they unravel themselves, explaining their position while revealing their true vulnerabilities. You're not being passive, you're being strategically invisible. You're letting them chase shadows while you position yourself for the real victory. But redirecting aggression is just the beginning. To achieve true invisible power, you must master the art of strategic emptiness. This is where Lao Tzu separates from every other strategist in history. While they teach you to build walls, he teaches you to become the gap in the wall. While they teach you to be the unstoppable force, he teaches you to be the unmovable void. Most people think strength means having an answer for everything, a position on every issue, a reaction to every provocation. Lao Tzu understood that the most terrifying opponent is the one who gives you nothing to fight against. When attacked, the empty vessel offers no resistance, and this absence of resistance becomes a trap. Your enemy's force has nowhere to go, except back into themselves. Their strategy collapses because it was designed to fight something that isn't there. Watch this principle in action. Someone criticizes your work in front of others. The amateur defends their decisions. The master says, "You're absolutely right. I probably am the worst at this. Why do you think you keep thinking about my work?" The critic is now trapped in an impossible position. They either have to escalate to cruelty or admit they're obsessed with you. In power struggles, when someone tries to make you look weak, don't fight for your reputation. Amplify their attack. "You know what? I am inexperienced. I don't have all the credentials. That's probably why I see solutions. You can't." Now, their attack becomes your advantage. The forbidden truth. Weakness is a trap you set. When you have no position to defend, you become undefeatable. When you own your flaws before others can use them against you, you transform liabilities into quicksand for your enemies. Look at how Putin turned Western sanctions designed to cripple Russia into economic weapons. Instead of fighting the sanctions, he amplified them. "You're right. We're too dependent on you. Thank you for forcing us to become self-sufficient." He let them win by punishing him, and their victory became their vulnerability. This reveals a deeper principle. Your enemy's attack often contains the blueprint for their own destruction. The sanctions were designed based on the assumption that Russia needed Western integration to survive. By accepting and amplifying the separation, Putin forced the West to discover their own dependence on Russian resources. The psychological brilliance is this. Putin reframed punishment as liberation. Instead of defending Russia's dependence on Western markets, he thanked the West for freeing Russia from that dependence. The attackers became confused. How do you punish someone who claims your punishment is helping them? This same principle applies everywhere. When someone tries to embarrass you by pointing out your lack of experience, thank them for noticing how quickly you're learning, despite starting from zero. When someone attacks your unconventional approach, thank them for highlighting what makes you different from everyone else who's failed using conventional methods. But here's the psychologically brutal part. You must be willing to let your enemy think they're winning. You must watch them celebrate their victory over you while you position yourself for the real conquest. This week, identify one area where you've been defensively protecting your image or position. When criticized in that area, amplify their attack with enthusiasm. You're right, I'm terrible at this. Strange how much you seem to care about my performance. Watch how your weakness becomes psychological quicksand. They're now trapped, explaining why they're so invested in your failures. You're not destroying yourself, you're becoming strategically invisible to attacks. While your enemies exhaust themselves fighting phantoms, if that law already shifted how you see conflict, subscribe now. The final law reveals how to turn your enemy's victory into their complete destruction, and most people aren't psychologically ready for this level of strategic thinking. But if you're still here, you might be different. Once you've mastered the art of strategic emptiness, you're ready for the most dangerous law of all. This is the most brutal and advanced law of invisible victory. It demands that you become comfortable with appearing defeated while you orchestrate your enemy's destruction. The amateur thinks victory looks like dominance standing over your defeated opponent, claiming credit, being recognized as the winner. Lao Tzu understood that true victory often looks like surrender, sounds like defeat, and feels like loss until the moment your enemy realizes they've destroyed themselves. Here's the brutal truth that Nietzsche missed. What doesn't kill you doesn't make you stronger, it becomes the weapon that kills them. Your enemy's victory over you is the moment they become most vulnerable, most careless, most convinced of their own superiority. Look at Netflix's surrender in the DVD wars. When Amazon and Blockbuster crushed their mail-order business, Netflix didn't fight back and abandon the battlefield entirely. While their enemies celebrated conquering the DVD market, Netflix quietly built streaming dominance in a space their victorious competitors didn't even know existed. By the time Amazon and Blockbuster realized the real war was digital, Netflix had already won. But here's what most people miss about Netflix's strategy. They didn't just retreat, they made their retreat look like defeat. While it was actually repositioning, Reed Hastings, Netflix's CEO, publicly admitted that DVD buy mail was a dying business. He let Blockbuster's executives mock him in the press for giving up on physical media. Meanwhile, Netflix was spending every dollar they would have wasted fighting the DVD war on building streaming infrastructure. While Blockbuster expanded their physical footprint and Amazon improved their shipping, Netflix was solving the problem that would make both approaches obsolete. This is the psychology of strategic surrender. Your enemies become overconfident in their victory, which blinds them to the real battlefield. They commit more resources to the war. They're winning while you build dominance in the war that matters. The brutal truth is this. Most people are fighting yesterday's war, while the real victors are preparing for tomorrow's. When everyone is competing for market share in a dying industry, the wise player is creating the industry that will replace it. Watch how this works in practice. In lawsuits, sometimes the most powerful move is to let your opponent win a small battle that establishes a precedent you can use to destroy them later. In business, sometimes you let a competitor steal your customers so you can observe their weaknesses and then build something they can't copy. In personal conflicts, sometimes you let someone expose your weakness, so that when you overcome it, their entire worldview collapses. They define themselves as superior to you in that area. When you surpass them, they lose, not just the competition, but their identity. Look at the masters of this principle. China loses trade negotiations to gain manufacturing dominance. Putin retreats from international pressure while achieving his real objectives. They understand something critical. You must know which victory you're actually fighting for. While your enemy fights for the obvious prize, you position yourself for the prize that matters. While they celebrate winning the battle, you've already won the war. But this requires a level of psychological discipline that most people cannot handle. You must be willing to be misunderstood, underestimated, even ridiculed, while you set up the conditions for inevitable victory. Identify your most important current conflict or competition. Now ask yourself, what if I let them win the thing they think they want? Map out how their victory could actually position you for something more valuable. Let them win the battle. Their victory party is where you plant the bomb for the war that actually matters. Design a strategic surrender. Let them have the title, the credit, the immediate recognition. While they're celebrating, position yourself for the victory that actually matters. You're not being weak, you're being strategically patient. You're playing a longer game than they even know exists. But what's the point of all this invisible power? What do you gain by winning battles your enemies don't even know they've lost? This brings us to the ultimate purpose of the Tao. Everything in our world is oriented around visible displays of power. Loud victories, dramatic confrontations, obvious dominance. Lao Tzu saw this as the path of exhaustion and eventual defeat. He taught something far more sophisticated. Wu-wei, or effortless action. This isn't about being passive, it's about being so strategically positioned that victory becomes inevitable without struggle. When you master these three laws, something extraordinary happens. You stop fighting and start orchestrating. You stop competing and start positioning. You stop trying to control people and start controlling the conditions that shape their choices. Your enemies exhaust themselves fighting battles you never participate in. Your competitors wear themselves out, chasing advantages you've already made irrelevant. Your opponents defeat themselves, trying to attack a target that was never really there. But here's the deeper transformation. You begin to see conflict differently. Instead of viewing opposition as a problem to overcome, you see it as information to exploit. Every attack reveals your enemy's assumptions about what will hurt you. Every criticism exposes what they think your weaknesses are. Every aggressive move shows you where they feel vulnerable. You start to realize that your enemies are your most valuable teachers, not because they make you stronger through adversity, but because they constantly reveal their own strategic thinking. They tell you exactly what they fear, what they value, and where they're planning to attack next. This creates a profound psychological shift. You stop being reactive and become predictive. You stop defending and start positioning. You stop trying to prove you're right and start letting others prove they're wrong. The ultimate irony is this: the more invisible your power becomes, the more powerful you actually are. The less you need to fight, the more every small action creates massive results. The less you need to control, the more others naturally follow your lead. This is the ultimate solution to the problem of conflict. Life is full of opposition and resistance. You cannot eliminate it, but you can transform your relationship to it. By making the natural flow of forces your ally rather than your enemy, you achieve what Lao Tzu called victory without victory triumph, so complete that no one, including your former enemies, realizes they've been defeated. Stop asking, "How do I beat this person?" It is the wrong question, and it will trap you in endless conflict. For the next month, ask only this: how do I position myself so that victory becomes inevitable? Orient every strategic decision around flow rather than force, positioning rather than pushing, patience rather than pressure. Master the art of invisible victory, and you'll discover that the most powerful victories are the ones no one sees coming. These three laws aren't philosophy. They're the unspoken rules of histories when are suppressed because they turn losers into gods. They reveal that true power is not about making others submit. It's about making submission irrelevant. You now possess the real Tao, not the meditation retreat version, not the fortune cookie wisdom, but the actual blueprint that intelligence agencies study in classified settings. You can use this knowledge to manipulate others through superior strategy, or you can use it for something far more revolutionary, becoming so strategically positioned that you no longer need enemies. But understand this: once you truly grasp these principles, you can never go back to seeing conflict the same way. You'll watch people exhaust themselves in obvious power struggles, while you position yourself for inevitable victory. You'll see through the theater of politics, business competition, and social dominance games to the underlying currents that actually determine outcomes. This knowledge comes with a warning. It's psychologically isolating. When you can see the patterns that others can't, when you understand the game at a level your opponents don't even know exists, you realize how few people are actually playing the same game you are. Most people are fighting for recognition, approval, or temporary advantage. You'll be positioning for long-term dominance. Most people react to what happens to them. You'll be orchestrating what happens around you. Most people try to win arguments. You'll be making arguments irrelevant. They buried these ideas under mountains of spiritual platitudes for a reason. The algorithm hates this content because it threatens the very systems that keep people fighting visible battles that exhaust them. Social media profits from obvious conflict, transparent competition, emotional reactions. Invisible power is bad for engagement metrics. The question is, will you keep fighting wars you can see, or will you master the art of victories so complete that your former enemies will thank you for defeating them? The choice is yours. The current always was. If you made it this far, you're already different from 90% of people. Subscribe to join the few who understand that the greatest victories look like defeats until the moment they don't. There's more forbidden strategy where this came from, and the algorithm doesn't want you to find it. Share this before it gets sanitized too. And remember, the masters of these principles don't advertise them. They don't give TED Talks explaining them. They simply use them quietly, invisibly, inevitably. The fact that you're hearing this means you're either ready to join them or you're not ready to understand what you've just learned. Time will tell which category you belong to.